All right, so if we could turn in our Bibles to Deuteronomy chapter 7. Deuteronomy chapter 7, we're going to read a text from there. Deuteronomy chapter 7. In verse number 1, Deuteronomy 7:1. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it. And by the way, as I read through this, I know we're talking about Israel coming in to possess their land, but what I want you to picture is I want you to picture you going from an unsaved state to a saved state. So he's bringing you, you've been adopted into his family, you're coming into a land because you're now a Christian that you didn't have as an unsaved person. So be thinking about this as we read this. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hath cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter shall not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. For they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you, and destroy thee suddenly. But thus shall ye deal with them. Ye shall destroy their altars, and break down their images, and cut down their groves, and burn their graven images with fire. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Father God, I'm thankful this morning for the opportunity to preach this message that you gave me. Lord, I know myself, and I know that I may not do as good a job as another might do with this message, Father. But I just pray that with your help, Lord, I know it can be everything that it's supposed to be. I pray this morning that as we look at your words and look at these examples from the Old Testament, that we would be able to apply them to ourselves and to our lives, and that we could learn the lesson we need to learn from them, Lord, and we could bring glory to you and live as we should. I just pray that if there is something I'm going to say that you don't want said in this message, that I pray that I would just leave it off, that you would nudge me or cause me to forget it. And if there's something that I need to say, Lord, that I don't have in my notes, I just pray you'd bring it to my mind, and I'll bring it up, Father. Just pray that everything we do here this morning will bring honor and glory to you. In Jesus' name, amen. So the title of my message this morning is called The Trouble We Allow. The Trouble We Allow. And we looked in Deuteronomy chapter 7. That's not really my text. That's really the background for what we're going to look at. Just wanted to establish, establish that they had a direction when they came into the land that they were supposed to destroy the inhabitants. That they weren't supposed to enter into any kind of agreements with them. They were supposed to remove them from the land completely and utterly. In Exodus, I'm just going to read this. You don't have to turn there because it's another background verse. In Exodus 23:31 it says, "And I will set thy bounds from the Red Sea even unto the sea of the Philistines, and from the desert unto the river, for I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and thou shalt drive them out before thee. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in thy land, lest they make thee sin against me. For if thou serve their gods, it will surely be a snare unto thee." So, now our text verse. Let's go to Judges. And this is where we're going to stay. Judges Might jump at some verses, but Judges is the text of the messages. Judges chapter 1, and we're going to look at verse 27. Judges 1:27. So we now have established what Israel was supposed to do, what their direction was. Now let's look at what they actually did. Judges 1:27. Neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Bethshan and her towns, nor Tanakh and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Dor and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Ilbnim and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Megiddo and her towns, but the Canaanites would dwell in that land. So they're already not doing what they're supposed to do. And it came to pass, when Israel was strong, that they put the Canaanites to tribute, and did not utterly drive them out. Neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites that dwelt in Gezer, but the Canaanites dwelt in Gezer among them. Neither did Zebulun drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, nor the inhabitants of Nahalal, but the Canaanites dwelt among them and became tributaries. Neither did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Acco, nor the inhabitants of Zidon, nor of Alab, nor of Achzib, nor of Helba, nor of Aphik, nor of Rehob. But the Asherites dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, for they did not drive them out. Neither did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh, nor the inhabitants of Beth Anath, but he dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land. Nevertheless, the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh and of Beth Anath became tributaries unto them. And the Amorites forced the children of Dan into the mountain, for they would not suffer them to come down to the valley. But the Amorites would dwell in Mount Heres, in Ajalon, and in Shalalbim. Yet the hand of the house of Joseph prevailed, so that they became tributaries. And the coast of the Amorites was from the going up of Akrabim, from the rock and upward. Judges chapter 2, verse 1. And an angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal to Bochim, and said, I made you go up out of Egypt, and have brought you unto the land which I swear unto your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of this land. Ye shall throw down their altars, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have ye done this? Wherefore, I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be as thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare unto you. So we're seeing here in the scripture, the story was that they had a direction. They were supposed to go into the land that God gave them. They were supposed to cast out the inhabitants of the land, and God had a reason that he wanted that done. They weren't supposed to enter into any agreements with them. They weren't supposed to, develop relationships with them, either as friends. They weren't supposed to let their children marry the children of the others. I mean, this is a total separation from the folks that were in the land. Number one, drive them out, and number two, don't develop any kind of relationship with them whatsoever. And they went into the land, and the stories show that they failed to accomplish that direction. They didn't do it. And then this judgment comes down, and it says, and ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of the land, ye shall throw down their altars, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have ye done this? Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out before you, but they shall be as thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare unto you. So because they allowed them to remain in the land, they became a snare, a trap, a trouble for them. And God said, now I'm not going to drive them out. Because you didn't do what I told you to do, you chose to allow them to remain in the land. Now it's going to be a problem for you. now you're going to have a problem. So I can only imagine that as they went into the land to start to fight and take the land that God gave to them, there were probably a lot of things going on during that time frame. And I thought, why didn't they drive them out? What happened? And I was comparing it to the life of a Christian. We were saved from sin. We were told when we got saved that we had a new life. We're a new creature. You know, all things become new to us. And now we're a part of a different family. You know, we were of our father, the devil, before, and now we're children of God. And when we stepped into that life, we were supposed to get rid of all the junk that we carried with us all of our life before we got saved and take on a new way of being, a new approach, a new look at everything. And just like the children of Israel, we go into our lives and we don't utterly get rid of everything, but we allow some things to stay. Just like the children of Israel, when we go through and we were supposed to cast out the inhabitants of the land or cast out the sins in our life and the things that we do that are wrong, there are some of them we let hide in the mountains. And some of them we say, well, I'm not going to get rid of those. And I thought, what's going on? So one of the things that went on, evidently from this text, is they kept some of the inhabitants of the land because they thought, leaving these inhabitants in the land provide me a benefit. I mean, didn't they say multiple times they put the Canaanites to tribute? So what does that mean? That means they were paying them because they were in their land. They're saying, we're going to let you stay, but you're going to have to give us something because we allow you to be in the land. Because we let you stay, you're going to have to pay us. Well, I don't know if it was paid. It might have been cattle. It could have been a lot of things. They had to pay tribute to the Israelites. And sometimes in our lives, when we look at the things that are there and we're instructed to clean our lives up and get rid of all this stuff, sometimes we let some things stay because there's a benefit. Well, if I keep doing that, I get something for it. So I'm going to let it stay, but I'm going to make it tribute to the Christian part of my life now. But I'm going to let it stay. Sometimes you look at it and they say, oh, well, you know, those guys, I don't have to worry about them. They're way up in the mountains. You know, I don't hardly even see those guys. We won't even let them come down in the valleys. Don't worry. I was supposed to drive them out of the land, but we just pushed them up into the mountains, out of sight, out of mind. I'm not worried about it. Hardly see that thing anymore. And in our lives, sometimes when we're cleaning ourselves up, we kind of push those things way off into that corner and say, "Oh, I still have it, but it's not like I'm using it all the time. You know, I just kind of stuck it off in the corner somewhere. It's in the shed. I packed it up with my stuff. It's there, but I'm not using it, so no big deal. What's the big deal? It's still there, but I'm not doing anything with it, right? No big deal." Or sometimes maybe they looked at some of the people and they go, it's a couple families. You know, they're not even that many people. They're nothing compared to us. They're weak. You know, what are they going to do that's going to cause us a problem? Oh, you know, yeah, there's 15 of them over here in this little, I'm going to allow to be in the land. Just a little thing, not a big deal. What's the big deal? It's just a little thing. It's not going to affect me. It's a little thing I allow in my life, but it's not going to affect me. It's okay. I'm just going to leave it alone. Maybe they looked at him and they said, you know, these guys don't seem so bad. Yeah, we're supposed to drive them out, but that's a pretty nice little village there that we're leaving. You know, you go in, they seem like a nice people. They don't cause any trouble. You know, they're just living their lives. They're just like us. They're just trying to live their lives and have people leave them alone. I mean, we can allow that one, right? That's not a big deal. I mean, think about in our lives, when I talk about how we're supposed to clean up sin and stuff like that. I mean, this one ought to really connect with people. Does everybody remember, because it wasn't that long ago, does everybody remember when they used to say, well, you know, we just want to give the homosexuals rights because they're just trying to live their lives. They don't care about you guys. They're not thinking about the Christians or any of that stuff. They just want to live their lives. Just be left alone. Can't you just leave them alone? Do you have to try and push them off and push them out? Just leave them alone. It's just love, is what they'd say, right? And as an example, because the importance of this is I want you to have a picture in your head of what I'm talking about that you can relate to. What happened when we just left them alone? Did they just want to be left alone? No. What did they do? They used the fact that they were allowed to now not just make you leave them alone, but now you have to accept them. And they targeted Christians by going to their businesses and asking them to do something that they knew was in direct opposition to everything they believed. And when they wouldn't do it, they sued them and used the government to shut them down or to make them yield, right? Because these kind of things are never just they just want to be left alone. They just want to, do their own thing. No, they don't. They want you to have to fully accept them and treat them, to support them, I guess is a better way. They want you to support them. And when you won't, we just want to be left alone becomes a hatred, and then they want to destroy you. The children of Israel looked at some coming into the land, and they said to some of them, I'm sure, well, that's a nice little village. The people there seem really friendly. They don't seem to be a problem. I don't understand. They just want to live their life. Do we have to push them out of the land? Can't we just leave them alone? Is it really that much of a big deal? We do the same thing in our lives. We'll win them over. We'll convince them. We'll leave them here. They're so nice, I'm sure, as they see us and God's blessing us, and as we're doing our thing, that they'll look and they'll go, look at that. Maybe I should consider what they're doing. When does God bless a disobedience? If He tells you to do something and you choose not to do it, He might get you through it, but He's not going to bless it, right? So if some of those I'm sure did end up, in those days you didn't get saved, but you could become Jewish in the sense that, you could throw away, your beliefs, your things like that, and you could become a proselyte. You could do that. It's possible to do. But not many of them did. More often than not, it was the other direction, right? What ended up happening was the realization of the warning started to happen. So let me see. I have an illustration that I was going to do, but let me ask you a question. I'll do it like this. I'm standing up here and someone's standing down there. And I reach down like this and grab onto their hand. Is it easier for me to pull that person up, or is it easier for that person to pull me off of the elevated position? Which one's easier, right? It's easier for them to pull me down because I'm off balance. They have all the leverage. That person could literally just drop to their knees and they'd pull me off the stage. Where it would be very difficult for me if they did that to hold on and then pull them up. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's much more likely that somebody's going to pull you down than that you're going to lift somebody up. It's just much more likely that that's the case. So we see this example of the children of Israel, and we can look through. The rest of the Bible is replete with stories. I mean, I'm not going to read them all to you, but we all know the stories of how the fact that the people that were allowed to stay in the land, how it troubled different folks. I mean, look at the stories. I mean, what about Samson? Samson was he was blessed with a lot of physical power. He was intended for a purpose for God. But Samson had a problem, and that was all the ones around him. He kept being lured away. And I don't think he, in his whole life, there isn't an example of where he decided he was going to, how am I trying to say this? Through his whole life, he always ended up getting linked up with these women from other countries, from outside of Israel. And true to what the warning was, they took him down a bad path. Or these folks that were weak at first, you say, well, they're not a danger to me, it's just a small group. Yeah, but over time they grew, they got bigger. Isn't that what happens with sin in lives too? Little things that we allow that we think are no big deal, we ignore it because it's just this little thing, and then it grows, and then it starts impacting us in a way we couldn't understand. I mean, the Bible is full of illustrations to help us remember something. Who knows the law of the harvest? The principle in Scripture. You reap what you sow. That's the law of the harvest, right? Now let me ask you a question. If I'm a farmer and I want to grow corn, and so I get corn seed and I go out into my field, if I throw corn seed down and fill up an acre, do I get that much seed back from what grows up out of the ground, or do I get more? Right? The yield is significant, right? Because at a minimum, I have to get at least 3 for every one I planted, because I'm going to eat one and one's going to go in the ground next year. But that's not what happens. You put your seed out and you get way more back than you planted, right? The principle of the law of the harvest is like that. You put something little out there and just ignore it, stick it in the ground, you're not going to get a little thing back. You're going to get back a whole bunch of trouble. And if you put a good thing out there, you're not going to get a little bit of good back, but you're going to get a whole bunch of good. So when we look at the law of the harvest, when we look at them coming into the land and saying they're not going to drive out the inhabitants, they're not worried about them, they're just a small presence, it's them planting that seed. It's like you this spring. It's starting to warm up. At some point, not a daisy, what am I trying to say? Dandelion's going to pop up in your yard, probably. Unless you sprayed so much last year that there's still stuff in the ground from last year. A dandelion will pop up in your yard. Just ignore it. Don't do anything. Leave it alone. It's just one dandelion. What's the big deal? It looks kind of pretty. It's just one. Because when it first comes up, actually dandelions look pretty cool, right? Bright, yellow. They're kind of pretty and stuff like that. When it first comes up, if you just look at it and say, oh, isn't that adorable? That's not going to cause any trouble in my lawn. I'm just going to leave that alone. No big deal. And then the next morning you wake up and, oh, there's 4 of them. Well, it's only 4. No big deal. I'll leave them alone. Someday you wake up and it's like half your yard is full of dandelions, and then they start dying, and now you don't even get those pretty flowers. Now they go to that seed stage where they're kind of ugly. And if you ever noticed on the dandelions how the leaves, they like open up and then they start killing the grass off around it. So it's not like they just pop up into the grass and you've got this pretty flower. Now they're killing your lawn and they're spreading. They're not pretty anymore, and now all the seeds spread. And next thing you know, you've got a problem. If you would have dealt with that dandelion when it first popped up, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But because you decided not to, because you decided to leave that dandelion, now all of a sudden it's got a lot. So I want you, object lesson. Find a dandelion and don't do anything about it. And see what happens. I'm telling you this, but I want you to know that it's true. Why? Because I want you to have in your head a picture of what happens when something is wrong and you don't deal with it. God puts these examples out here so we can see it because He wants you to understand it. He wants you to be able to relate to what's going on. So just ignore it. Don't do it. Because, when it's just the 1 or 2, it would probably just take a few minutes to deal with, and then it's gone. Can you imagine if you could always get the dandelion up the first time one popped up, how much better things would be? I wonder if you would even need to spray. If as soon as one popped up, it's like, oh, it's out, and I'm taking it, and it's gone. I guess the wind blows from your neighbors. That's it, isn't it? Your neighbors never take care of the dandelions, or you got a field. So no matter how well you take care of everything, they just blow into your yard and you got to do it anyway, kind of a thing. So we look at these things, and just like the children of Israel when they're coming into the land, they didn't see a problem. They're way up out there, out of sight, out of mind. They're too small, too weak. We don't need to worry about them. You know, it's just they're just trying to live their lives. All these are things that we can look at. This was written for our admonition so that we can understand why this stuff matters. And the Bible is full of stories to help drive that point home. Yet somehow, as Christians, we miss it. And we allow the little what originally isn't a stronghold, but the little pockets of sin to exist in our lives, and we don't deal with it. You know, something from our past that we're just not ready to let go of yet, but we're not doing anything with it, but we want to keep it, you know, kind of a thing. I mean, you know how I heard a lot of preachers preach on how bad Facebook is. Do you know why they preach on it? Because in a lot of churches, they've seen a lot of marriages break up over Facebook. Because somebody that they knew a long time ago, when they were in high school or something, starts interacting with them, and this little nothing thing starts to become a problem, and it breaks people up. So we've got to find those things in our life and understand the law of the harvest. That little thing that you allow, law of the harvest, it's a seed. Okay? It's a seed right now, and you can do something with it while it's a seed. And number one, don't allow it to go into the ground of your life. Get rid of it like that. That's the best method. But if it falls out of your hand and it lands in the ground and starts to grow up, it's like, uh-oh. Deal with it right then as it's popping up. Don't let the roots get into the ground and get established where it starts popping up. Because you know what ends up happening? Then for the rest of your life, you're dealing with it because you got it out of the ground, but the roots were deep, and so it's going to pop up somewhere else. And then you're going to deal with it over here, and then it's going to pop up over here, and it's going to be a continuous problem for you forever because you didn't deal with it when you should have. Just like the children of Israel, it'll be a thorn in your side to cause you trouble and to tempt you and to cause issues. You know, when you look at our history, a lot of people died so that we could have what we have. Now, I don't mean as Christians, even as a country. A lot of people died to give us what we have. For me to be able to have a Bible and to be able to go to a church and do all that, there were people that gave up their lives to make that possible. For me to live in a country where I'm free to do that, a lot of people gave up their lives so that I could do that too. There was a lot of sacrifice to give us the opportunity. And we can sometimes be disconnected from that and not think about it. How do we honor the fact that there were Christians who were burned at the stake for what they believed? People were killed because they wanted to give you a Bible. I mean, can you imagine not having a Bible? What if you just had to take my word for it? You know, that's the way it used to be. Somebody would tell you what it was you needed to know, and you couldn't check and see if it was true or not. So you just had to accept that that was correct. How do you think things get so bad? And you'd say, how could the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses go so wrong? Because the guy up at the front is more important than anything else. That's the authority for them. And in their case, they have a Bible, but they don't use it. But we have a Bible because people died to give us one. I can't imagine, Russ, I can't imagine the fact that you spent all that time in the military and what you did, and that there is a candidate running for president of the United States that's a socialist. I can't imagine that. I mean, the lives that ended to protect this country from communism and socialism, to see a guy running for president and see large population centers supporting this guy. I can't imagine that. I can't imagine the fact that somebody died to give us a Bible and nobody reads it. They don't even care. I can't imagine. I mean, it's just, the lessons are there for us to pick up. It was, why? Because it was a little thing at first that we allowed. This country allowed this little thing. Because we're free, we allow there to be a socialist party. We allow it. Because we're Christians, and well, isn't being a Christian supposed to all be about love? We allow the homosexuals to be around. And now what do we have because of the allowance? Now we have a guy running for president who's socialist, who talked about how great it was in Cuba. And we have people that are homosexuals that are now doing drag queen library hour, and will go in and make you make a cake that I won't even talk about. If it was all adults, I'd tell you one of the stories that I read about what they requested on the cake that this guy refused to make. None of us would have made that. Some people would say, oh, just make the cake. Not this cake. You don't know what this guy asked for. The same guy tried a couple things until he found the one thing that tripped him up, and then he sued him. And he's done it multiple times. It's the wickedness of it. And why? Because we allowed it to happen. Because we didn't deal with it when it first came up. You know, we have a choice. We can play the long game, or we can play the short game. The short game is focused on what's going to give us what we want right now. And the long game is what's the right thing to do long term. You know, with all the sacrifice to get everybody in this room to the place that they're at, we should all be, in honoring that sacrifice, we should all strive to be everything that we're capable of being as a Christian, as an American. We should strive to be everything. How better to honor the sacrifice of somebody who died, both Christian past and our country's past, than to do everything we can with it to honor that they gave up everything they had. What better way? But if we want to be everything we're capable of being, we have to be capable. How do you be capable? You pray. Right? Because what does being capable mean? It means you're ready. It means you're not taking it for granted. You pray, you read, you meditate on God's Word. You do. You share. Because you can either be capable or you can be comfortable. And we've gotten into this mess as Christians and as a country because we were more interested in being comfortable than we were interested in being capable. I mean, everybody knows if you've been on a sports team, if you've been in the military, if you've been part of a group, how do you get to the place to where you're capable as a group? You practice, you drill, you prepare. Because trust me when I say, and I know that anybody in here who's served can say this is true, if you don't figure out what you're going to do until it happens, it's probably not going to go real well for you, right? It's probably going to go really poorly. However, if you think of the things that can happen and you prepare for it, then when things start to go wrong, you've got a chance. And the more you prepare, the more prepared you are, then the better you are, then the more prepared you are to deal with the problem when it actually comes up. And that's with anything. You want to do a good job at an interview? Then prepare for the interview. You want to do a good job in a battle? Then prepare for the battle. Then train. You want to do good in sports? Then practice until it becomes automatic. Because in the stress of things happening, intelligence goes out the window. I read a book one time where they were talking about that. They said that your fine motor skills disappear when you're under stress. That you, who when they get in trouble, stops and thinks through the plan. It's what happens when you get into a stressful situation is you take one of your alternatives right off the top of that pile in the back of your head, and that's what you do. So if you practice, if you train enough so that the right stuff is on the top of that pile in the back of your head, when everything goes wrong, you'll grab the right thing. But if you don't practice, then who knows what you're going to grab? Right? You don't want to be in that situation. So how do you practice? What's the equivalent of a Christian when they talk about a sports team getting ready for a game, or the military getting ready for a battle, is that you know already what you need to do. How do you know what you need to do? You read the Bible, and it tells you, so that you know, Joe, do you want a cigarette? Can I give you a cigarette, Joe? Do you want a cigarette? Why? I heard a story one time about a mother who was raising her child, and she used to go to him all the time and say, hey, can I get you a cigarette? No. Hey, can I get you a cigarette? Not like constantly, but throughout life. Can I get you a beer? No. Why? Because when he heard those words later in life, she wanted it to be automatic. She didn't even want him to have to think about it. Hey, can I get you a beer? No. He didn't even stop to think, do I want a beer? I don't know. I'm 18 now. No, I'm 21 now, so I can technically have a beer. There was no thought process. Do you want a beer? No. No, thanks. Why? Because it was automatic. When you're in the sports, you're not sitting there with that bat ready to hit that ball and saying, okay, the ball's going to arc in like this, and I need to get at this angle, and I need to make sure I've got my weight distributed. You're not thinking through that. What happens is the ball comes at you and you hit it. It's automatic. You train to the point that you don't have to think about it. As a matter of fact, if you want to screw somebody up and you're playing sports with them and they're doing a really good job, this is what you do. Okay, I'm going to tell you how to screw somebody up. I'm going to use golf as an example, but insert your favorite sport here. Somebody's much better at putting the ball at golf than you are. So what you do when you're putting with them, go, man, I admire the way you putt that ball. You do an amazing job. Can you tell me, what are you thinking about when you grab that putter and you're looking at that ball? Tell me about the weight distribution. Make them think about it. Make them describe it to you. And then the next time they putt, that's what they'll be thinking about. And it won't be automatic anymore. They'll be thinking about it, and they're going to screw it up. Because if you have to think about it, you're not going to do a good job. Same thing in Christian life. If you have to think about what you're going to do when somebody offers you a beer or drugs, then you're already in trouble. If you know automatically what you need to do when that happens, then you're okay. If you know and do the right thing, right? Then you're going to be okay. Reading the Bible, praying, meditating on what you read, listening to preaching is a way to prepare you for what you're going to run into. Because you won't always anticipate everything that can go wrong. But you can see in the Bible about when someone was faced with a decision that they made the wrong choice, and you can learn from that so that you know, okay, so I might think it's just a little thing, but I shouldn't leave it alone, because little thing, law of the harvest, seed in the ground, grows up. So yeah, if it's wrong and it's little, doesn't matter, I want it out. And just train yourself up. That's the way I'm going to be. You need to practice so that you're prepared for when these things come up. Because, with me traveling, I think about stuff all the time, because I'm thinking about what kind of crazy things could happen to me if I traveled. What would I do if in the middle of the night someone knocked on the door and I go and look at the people and there's a girl standing on the other side of the door? All right? I thought about that because I thought, you know what? I'm not going to open it, because what if I open it and then now someone walks down the hall and they see me opening the door and a woman standing on the other side in a town that I don't live. I didn't have to do anything. Now it looks really bad, right? So what would be better? Keep the door closed. Find out what they want. You're at the wrong room. Go somewhere else, or something. Or, oh, you need some help? Well, let me call the front desk, and they'll be happy to send somebody up. If you don't know what you need to do when it happens, you might make the wrong decision. So you read. And where do I get that from? Flee all appearance of evil. It doesn't matter what you did, especially today. Read the news. It doesn't matter what you actually did. What matters is, what did you get accused of? Because by the time anybody finds out whether you actually did it or not, the damage is done. So it's better off to just not get in the situation in the first place. Everybody made fun of Pence because he said he wouldn't go and grab a meal with a female staffer if it was just him and her. And everybody was like, that is so unfair, because Women deserve every same opportunity that men do. And so if you're a man staffer, you have an opportunity to sit down and work with him, and you can get the benefit of that. But, because you're a woman, he won't do that. No, it's because he was fleeing all appearance of evil. And so he had a thing. And so when it presented himself, he already knew what he was going to do. Nope. Let's bring somebody else. Let's make it a group. I can talk to you in a group. That'll work. But I'm not going to go and do it just me and you. Not going to do that. And I'm sure that there were times when he was not tempted to do something wrong, but tempted to set the rule aside and say, I can't get anybody to go with me, and I do really need to talk to this person, that he had to come to. What do you do then? You need to already know. You need to already know, because if you don't, you're going to do the wrong thing. Are we going to be capable, or are we going to be comfortable? If the goal is to be capable, we have to prepare. We have to read. We have to meditate. We have to pray. Maybe we have to ask God, show me. I don't know what I should do in this situation, but I heard that it happened to somebody, or I'm afraid it might happen to me. God, what should I do? Tell me. And see if God doesn't give you the answer to what you should do. See if it doesn't happen. We owe a lot to those that were before us. Like I say, I'm blessed to live in a country where I can say that that's true in our country history as well as in our Christian history. We owe a lot to the folks that gave everything to get us to where we are today. Let's not throw it away. Let's not throw it away because we're more interested in being comfortable than we are in being capable. Let's do the right things. Let's know what we need to do. Let's clean up the situation so that our little allowance that we allowed doesn't become a big problem for our kids and for our family later, or for us too. Sometimes things mushroom really quickly and get us in trouble. Let's instead deal with them. Let's do the hard thing and deal with it and just not allow it to exist. But while we're thinking through the song, what I want everybody to do is just think, is there anything in your life that's small, or maybe it's not small anymore, something that you allowed and now it's causing you trouble, or something that you're allowing that could cause you trouble later? And see if God is trying to get you to deal with that thing.